Wisconsin does not sleep. They sold you the lie of cheese curds, polite smiles, and glassy lakes under soft northern lights. That was never the truth. The soil here is soaked through with blood and bone. The dead do not rest. They claw, they tear, they wait in the dark with wet mouths and empty eyes, hungry for the next living body stupid enough to step too close. What follows is not folklore. It is a map of open wounds. Far north, on the black edge of West Bay Lake, the ruins of Summerwind Mansion still breathe. Built as a fishing lodge and later claimed by Robert Lamont in 1916, the house was already wrong before the first family unpacked. Workers watched tools burst into flame with no spark. Rooms stretched and shrank between heartbeats. Lamont himself one night heard movement in the kitchen, raised his revolver, and emptied every chamber into a shadow that refused to fall. The bullets punched clean through empty air and buried themselves in the wall. He fled. Later, owners found a sealed closet no blueprint had ever recorded. Inside lay a full human skeleton, jaw locked open in a silent scream. The last scraps of flesh turned to black sludge that stuck to the floorboards like tar. The Hinshaw family moved in during the 1970s and lasted only months. Arnold cracked under the weight of voices that whispered his name from inside the walls. Ginger tried to open her own wrists after something cold and unseen pressed her face into the mattress and breathed the stench of a month-old corpse into her mouth. The house burned to the ground in 1988 after a lightning strike that some say was summoned. The foundation stones remain. Visitors still feel freezing hands close around their throats. Photographers capture mists that form human shapes and then split open as if something is peeling itself free. The smell of rotting meat rises from dirt that has been empty for decades. Summerwind does not want company. It wants meat. Drive south towards Stevens Point and the Highway 66 bridge will find you first. Locals call it the Bloody Bride Bridge for a reason that never softens with retelling. On her wedding night, the bride's car left the road in a scream of metal and glass. The wreck tore her body apart. Skin peeled from her face in long, wet strips. Bone showed white through the ruin of her chest. Now she stands in the center of the span after dark, dressed black with old blood, veil glued to the raw meat of her scalp. Drivers slam their brakes and watch her ruined mouth open in a silent howl. Some feel her cold weight drop into the back seat. Blood begins to drip down the rearview mirror in thick ropes. One officer struck what he thought was a woman in white, stepped out to help, and found her already sitting behind him, skin hanging in flaps, eyes locked on his in the mirror. He vanished only after he emptied his stomach onto the asphalt. Fog rises on clear nights and takes her shape. The bridge remembers every wet impact. It is still hungry for another wedding party. Deeper into the state, the Wood County Asylum once sprawled across hundreds of acres near Marshfield. The buildings are mostly gone now, scraped into scrap, but the ground never forgot. Patients were locked in wet basements and tunnels that stank of human waste and fear. Some saw the devil's face in the boiler fire and threw themselves screaming into the flames. Their skin blistered, split, and cooked while the smell of burning fat filled the wards. Survivors claimed shadow figures dragged the screaming ones back for more. A little girl with long black hair still wanders the remaining tunnels. Maintenance workers who entered alone came out with deep claw marks raked across their chests and no memory of the minutes missing from their lives. Cold spots move like living things. Disembodied weeping turns into wet, choking sounds. The asylum was torn down, yet investigators still record voices begging to be let out and the heavy drag of something that no longer has legs. The dirt here is packed with teeth and broken restraint buckles. Whatever was done in those rooms is still being done in the dark. Milwaukee's Pfister Hotel greets the living with marble and crystal and the dead with pure malice. Charles Pfister built his grand house of luxury in 1893 and never truly left. Baseball players on road trips wake to find their gear packed by unseen hands and furniture sliding across the floor as if it wants to crush ribs. Guests report icy fingers wrapping around their throats in the night, while a heavy shape sits on the edge of the bed. The stench of decaying flesh fills sealed rooms. Some swear they hear wet tearing sounds inside the walls, as if something is still being pulled apart room by room. Televisions click onto static that forms screaming faces. Elevators open onto empty floors where footprints appear in dust that was cleaned an hour earlier. Pfister himself has been seen in the lobby, face sagging like melting wax, watching new arrivals the way a butcher watches livestock. The hotel is still open. The dead check in whenever they please and they do not check out. In Baraboo, the Old Baraboo Inn keeps its own collection of the unfinished. Once a brothel and saloon thick with violence, it now serves food while the murdered still walk the halls. The spirit of a woman named Mary appears in a dress dark with her own blood. She was cut down in one of the upper rooms, and the floorboards remember the spray. Dishes explode off shelves without warning. Employees have been locked inside the walk-in cooler by an invisible force, clawing at the door while frostbite blackens their fingers, and a woman's laughter drips from the dark like fresh blood. Shadow children giggle as they slam doors hard enough to split wood. Cowboy figures in period clothes appear at the bar and vanish when spoken to, leaving behind the copper smell of old gunshots. Cold hands shove the living down staircases. One cook felt teeth scrape along the back of his neck, while something unseen breathed against his ear. The inn never closed. Neither did its dead. Dartford Cemetery near Green Lake looks peaceful until the sun drops. Chief Highknocker rises from the earth, dripping lake water from empty eye sockets, ceremonial dress plastered to a body that should have finished rotting a century ago. Sit on the wrong mausoleum, and invisible child hands will shove you hard enough to crack bone against headstones. Civil War dead march between the stones in fog, uniforms stiff with dried gore, faces half blown away by phantom musket fire, jaws working as if they are still trying to scream orders. Orbs of light become staring eyes. Dark figures stand at the tree line and do not move until you turn your back. The cemetery is small. The rage inside it is not. Further east, Riverside Cemetery in Appleton holds the grave of Kate Blood. Legends name her witch, adulteress, child killer. Visitors report a black hooded shape that forms above her stone and then collapses into itself. Blood seeps from the granite on dry nights, thick and real enough to stain fingers. A deep chill settles into the marrow of anyone who lingers. Some leave with scratches that appear under their clothes, long parallel lines as if raked by nails that were never alive. North of Green Bay, the blackened shell once called the Maribel Caves Hotel, known to locals as Hotel Hell, still stands in pieces. Fire gutted it decades ago, yet the ruins refuse to cool. Apparitions of former guests wander the collapsed halls with skin hanging in charred strips. The smell of smoke and cooked meat rises without flame. Shadow figures drag themselves across broken floors on arms that end in raw stumps. Investigators have fled after feeling teeth close on their calves in total darkness. The land around the hotel is littered with caves that breathe cold air even in summer, air that carries distant screaming. Clark County Insane Asylum in Owen adds its own chapter of institutionalized horror. Patients endured ice baths that stopped hearts, electroshock that cooked brains inside living skulls, and restraints that cut to the bone. The building is abandoned now, windows like empty eye sockets. Voices still argue in empty day rooms. Apparitions of staff in blood-stiff aprons walk the wards. Cold spots form the exact shape of bodies that once hung themselves from pipes. Scratching comes from inside sealed walls. The place feels less haunted than still operational, as if the treatments never stopped and the patients never died. These are not separate stories. They are one long wound stretched across Wisconsin. Summerwind's rotting closet. The bride's peeled face on the bridge. The asylum tunnels thick with the stink of cooked flesh. Pfister's wet tearing sounds in the walls. Mary's blood-soaked dress at the inn. Highnocker's waterlogged march. Kate Blood's seeping stone. Hotel Hell's charred procession. The asylum's endless restraints. Every location feeds the next. The dead here do not stay in their own graves. They travel. They learn. They remember the exact sound a living throat makes when it tears.